All right, we're going to talk about some more serious situations over in Syria. And I'm very, very concerned that the U.S. is going to escalate this war while we're all watching Tropical Storm Isaac and the Republicans. I'm going to be talking about the Republicans. Looks like they're going to pull a fast one here at the convention. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But apparently Syria's government are back in control of Aleppo. And the so-called Free Syrian Army, in other words, all these hired mercenaries that were brought in from other countries to act like they're a popular revolution, they're reduced to basically sniping at people and committing acts of terror. They don't have a solid front any longer. It's just these loose groups and individuals running around trying to keep the degree of trouble as high as they can. Now, the Syrian media is saying that the Syrian military has pretty much regained control of Syria. And they're just rounding up the last of the terrorists and mercenaries, foreign mercenaries. Now, the British papers are claiming Western troops are in Syria. The British Daily Star reported over the weekend 200 SAS and SBS troops are in Syria hunting for the weapons of mass destruction. And the Star also reported that the SAS are accompanied by British MI6, US CIA, and French and American troops. They've already invaded. They just don't want you to know about it. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Women.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I want to push Syria down on the stack here and talk about something. I was going to mention this later in the show, but I think I'd better get it out there now. Remember when Hurricane Isaac or Tropical Storm Isaac was heading toward Florida and the Republican leadership announced they were not going to have the convention taking place today, that it was going to start on Tuesday. And then they announced earlier this morning that they were actually going to formally open the convention today, which they've just done, and then adjourn until Tuesday morning for the safety of the delegates. Well, they don't seem to be showing any signs of adjourning. And there was a rumor floating around earlier today, we posted it at whatreallyhappened.com, that what may be about to happen is the Republicans said, we're not going to do anything on Monday, stay home for safety, and then the word went out to Mitt Romney's delegates to go ahead and show up anyway, and they're going to have the vote to make Romney the candidate right now when they hope there's a minimum of Ron Paul delegates in the convention center to speak out against it. So they may be about to pull a fast one. And there is a rush because Ron Paul's delegates up in Maine have gone to court to seek an injunction to force the Republican leadership in Maine to reinstate Ron Paul's delegates. And so if the Republicans pull a fast one, hold a vote, and declare Romney the nominee as of right now, and then gavel the meeting closed, it won't matter what the court does any longer. This is 2000 Florida all over again. And I'll be talking about the ramifications of that, but we're going to be keeping an eye on this situation, but I have a sneaky feeling that the party of Richard Nixon is about to do something very, very underhanded, like they haven't been all along. All righty, getting back to the situation in Syria. As I mentioned before the break, the British Daily Star is reporting that SAS, SBS are in Syria, hunting for the weapons of mass destruction, and if you believe that one, I've got some of Saddam's nuclear bombs to sell you. And the SAS are accompanied by MI6, CIA, and French and American troops. So for all intents and purposes, the U.S. and its allies, its cronies, its thugs, its henchmen, have already invaded Syria. And I suspect they're going to be heading for a decapitation strike against Assad himself, because by golly, you will have a U.S. puppet government. Because we can't afford to lose Syria, or we're going to have that much more trouble going into Iran. Hillary Clinton is already out there screaming that we have to have a Syria no-fly zone. And a reminder, when you send your warplanes over the skies of another country without their permission and say you've got to keep your planes on the ground, that is an invasion by air. It's an act of war. So Hillary wants to declare war on Syria. And she's out there saying, we must stop the bloodshed. Well, you know, if you want to stop the bloodshed in Syria, then stop smuggling weapons into that hired mercenary army. Nobody is believing this, that this is an honest popular uprising against Assad. It is another U.S. covert overthrow like they've been doing for the last 30 and 40 years. They tried to do in Iran 3 years ago. That one cratered. Now they're doing it in Syria. And it's in trouble. Their hired mercenary army has fallen flat on its face. And now the U.S. is going to try and salvage the situation by just going in and invading, and I expect they're probably going to do it this week while we're all watching the GOP convention and Tropical Storm Isaac and the Bayou of Louisiana sinking into the ocean. Now, it's important to remember which side the U.S. is on in this Syrian invasion. The U.S. is supporting al-Qaeda. It's right out of George Orwell's 1984. We've always been at war with East Asia. Al-Qaeda was the enemy. Al-Qaeda's bad, except when they're making war on the people we want to overthrow, and then they're our good buddies. Now, there is a town called Rabla, population 12,000. They have been blockaded by the hired mercenary army, the Free Syria Army, for the last 2 weeks. They are starving to death. This is a predominantly Christian town. And so you need to understand the government of the United States of America are funding the mercenaries who are starving Christians. Christians are on the other side of this. The U.S. government has declared war on the Christian citizens of Syria, which means you're probably going to be next, because we know who the U.S. government actually works for. Now, Netanyahu is already out there screaming, war on Iran, gotta have it now. Now, the elections in Israel have been postponed for 1 month. It was going to happen in a couple of weeks in September. It's been pushed back 1 month to October. So Netanyahu has 6 weeks to start his war with Iran. And we're seeing all over the Israeli media, they're out there basically saying everybody thinks a war on Iran's a good idea, but really we need to get the Americans to go fight it for us. Like the presumption that America is always going to throw their money and children onto Israel's enemies. It's like not even beyond question any longer. And they're chastising the United States for this continuing delay. How dare you delay? You only exist to fight wars on our enemies. Apparently that's the attitude coming out of Netanyahu's office. That's your only reason for existence, is to give us money and soldiers. Now, my opinion is, if Israel wants war with Iran, then we let Israel fight and pay for it. No matter how many of Israel's enemies the U.S. murders, this never stops because Israel is making enemies faster than we can kill them. We'll be right back after these commercials. Netanyahu. It's really all Netanyahu, just out there saying, you've got to go kill Iran for us. They're evil. They have weapons of mass destruction. They have a Death Star. And all of this other situation going on. And we're seeing, again, a ramp up of the propaganda in the American media. To say, yes, the right and moral and just thing to do is to go and attack Iran. And I noticed over the weekend, like National Geographic Channel, it's all Nazi and Hitler and World War II stuff, and they're replaying those endless movies about the Nazis that Hollywood has cranked out over the last couple of decades. And I know about you, I'm sick and tired of hearing about World War II. It all happened before I was born, and I'm going to be 60 on Wednesday. Enough is enough is enough is enough. Let us deal with the present day. The reality behind all the propaganda is that support for war with Iran has collapsed inside Israel itself. The Israeli people are in the streets protesting. They've been hit with massive tax increases and austerity. They're wondering, where's all this money going that has been poured into the government of Israel by all these nations around the world that are being guilted over the Holocaust? Tel Aviv has turned into an even worse black hole of money than Wall Street. Support within Netanyahu's cabinet is about 50-50. He's trying to basically coerce one of the members to change their vote so he can authorize a strike. He's not getting that. Support within the Mossad for a strike on Iran has collapsed. Support within his own military has collapsed. Nobody is buying this idea that if Netanyahu can get us poor American goyim to go kill the Iranians, that Iran is not going to attack Israel itself. Because Israel, like Iraq, knows that Israel is calling the shots on this thing. So Netanyahu is starting to feel he's cornered, he's panicked, which of course makes him even more dangerous. He needs something to reinvigorate support for war with Iran. among his own people and his own government, let alone the American people, and he's only got 6 weeks left to do it. Now, part of the propaganda we saw over the weekend was new satellite imagery shows Iran covering up buildings IAEA wants to visit, says U.S. think tank. And then they show the photo, and these buildings are covered with bright pink tarps. By the way, Iran has already said, yeah, you can come take a look. We don't care. And they're trying to make a big deal. They put pink tarps all over these buildings, and that's suspicious because, of course, when you're hiding something from the IAEA, the first thing you do is drape bright pink tarps all over the buildings.